Hey everyone, this is the Brighten Your Bulb series, an employee skills enhancement initiative brought to you by PCI's 2020 strategic plan, as well as our ongoing efforts to embed innovation. Each session in the series is specifically designed to enhance staff knowledge, insights, and skills for innovation. Each session will be covered in 15 to 20 minutes and presented during a live session, as well as recorded separately for anytime viewing. All questions and follow-up will be taken on Chatter within the Embedded Innovation Learning Group under the hashtag BYB and the keyword for that session. Today's session is going to be on global breakthrough innovation, and my name is Chris Besnecker, VP for Strategic Initiatives, and I'll be presenting today. Now, for today's session, we want to try to answer 4 basic questions. 1, what is the difference between a break-in and a breakthrough innovation? 2, where do global breakthrough innovations fit within PCI's definition of innovation? 3, what are the key elements of a global breakthrough innovation? And 4, what are the examples of global breakthrough innovations under PCI's mission of health, hunger, and hardship? Now, over the last few years, there have been increasing interest in incubating global breakthrough innovation, and this can be seen in the myriad of challenges and prizes and institutional labs that have been set up precisely to cultivate global breakthroughs. But what does this really mean? What distinguishes a breakthrough from other innovations or interventions that can have a significant positive change? It's not always apparent or clearly articulated by those investing or those engaged in breakthrough innovations, and sometimes the term is used loosely to exaggerate relevance. So we've looked at several different sources, from donors to thought leaders on innovation, and we've also looked at commonly recognized global breakthrough innovations to see if we could identify common characteristics by which one can assess, define, and even design for global breakthrough innovation. In order to understand this better, we thought it might be helpful to discuss global breakthrough innovation within the context of how PCI thinks about innovation. So at PCI, we've determined that innovation can occur within 3 realms. 1, policies, procedures, or processes. 2 are people and environment. And 3, field, methods, models, or approaches. Now, the vast majority of these can be defined as break-in innovation. This includes all of the internal innovation that fits within policies, procedures, or processes, as well as innovation to improve the productivity of our people and environment. Moreover, most if not all of our field-level innovations will also be break-in innovation. However, there is a small percentage that may actually have the potential to be global breakthrough innovation. Now, before going any further, it's important to note that this pattern is not just true within PCI, but also outside of PCI. Most innovations in the nonprofit and even for-profit sector could be defined as break-in innovation. It's also important to note that break-in innovations are not of lesser value per se, or do not ultimately have less impact than global breakthrough innovation. In fact, as there are more of them by nature, they in aggregate have a greater impact on our lives. Now, another critical similarity between break-in and breakthrough innovation within the context of PCI is that they both meet PCI's definition of innovation. In other words, they contribute to the mission of transforming millions of lives and meet 2 out of 3 criteria: making current practice obsolete, improving value by a minimum of 50%, or providing a unique product highly valued. But global breakthrough innovation has an additional threshold, and it's important to know what that is. So let's break this down a little further. Generally speaking, break-in innovations are more evolutionary, whereas breakthrough innovations are revolutionary. It is what some refer to as disruptive innovation. Break-in innovation may address a broad range of primary or ancillary development issues, including how we provide services or the way that we do things. Global breakthrough innovation, on the other hand, tends to focus on a primary development challenge. Break-in innovation significantly improves the way existing models or approaches work, whereas breakthrough innovations create something that is fundamentally new. Break-in innovation may be limited in its impact to small groups or individuals, with change that occurs slowly over time. Breakthrough innovation, on the other hand, is designed for wildfire spread and global adoption. So the key elements of breakthrough innovation are that they address a primary development challenge, they create a new response paradigm, and achieve wildfire spread and adoption. Let's break those elements down just a little bit further. So when you think of primary development challenge, think of the bottom of Maslow's pyramid of self-actualization. It's addressing problems that significantly deny people of their basic needs. We're talking about water, food, safety, etc. One could add adequate income here since most basic needs are transactional, requiring income. It's a challenge to solve because the problem is so entrenched and hasn't been readily solved by existing paradigms. And we'll talk about this a little more under the second condition. Now, finally, primary development challenge is about magnitude. It typically affects vulnerable people in all parts of the globe with major negative human, social, and economic costs that continue to undermine nations, communities, and families. And not solving them has a huge impact, and we're talking about millions and billions, millions of people affected, billions of dollars or resources exhausted to try to address it. Creates a fundamentally new response paradigm. A key perspective for those that invest in global breakthrough innovation is that simply building on existing approaches is too limiting. It won't move the bar far enough or fast enough to effectively address the need. As such, something new has to be created or invented. Now, nothing is entirely new, but global breakthrough innovation combines existing technologies or infrastructure or research or business models in entirely new ways. It basically invents something that didn't exist before. If you take the automobile as an example, before the turn of the century, wheeled vehicles existed, combustion engines existed, and manufacturing existed. But it was the unique way in which these were combined that made it a global breakthrough. The combination and perfection of those three components was the invention. Another good indication that something is new is user demand for that specific product or service is somewhat unknown because nothing really like it exists. Few people knew that they needed or wanted a car before it was invented and mass produced. Now, this does not mean that you don't have an understanding of its potential, which gets to our final point. A global breakthrough innovation often has unique insights into user needs or what users want in something that hasn't been created yet. If successfully designed, the adoption will be so fast and so simple that people will be asking, how did I survive without this before? Another key to spread is that global breakthrough innovations are able to leverage existing infrastructure to scale quickly or create that infrastructure to ensure the ability to achieve global scale. And finally, widespread adoption must have superior cost benefit relative to what currently exists. It is this ratio that should be fairly consistent across contexts that makes it undeniable as the new preferred option. Now, we're going to take a look at 3 examples of global breakthrough innovations and try to understand what they look like under the realms of health, hunger, and hardship. So we're going to start with health. Now, prior to the 1970s, the gold standard for the treatment of cholera was intravenous saline solution developed 100 years earlier. And if you contracted cholera and were lucky to get to a clinic where medical professionals could apply that treatment, you had a 40% chance of dying. Now, not getting treatment almost assured you would die. And this didn't even account for the millions that would die from other forms of diarrheal-related illnesses. But within a span of about 15 years, starting in the early 1960s, the treatment of cholera and other milder forms of dehydration would be revolutionized. And the revolution would be called oral rehydration therapy. The first part of the revolution was the discovery that adding glucose to the saline solution in the right proportions, you could actually increase intestinal absorption, meaning that unlike saline solution alone, more fluids were going in the body than were leaving the body. The second discovery was that the mixture could be administered orally, which effectively liberated treatment from the confinement of a medical facility administered by a trained health professional. Theoretically, any mother with a sick child could apply this therapy. Then in 1971, during the Pakistani Civil War, an epidemic of cholera broke out in a refugee camp in West Bengal, where millions of people had been displaced. When IV fluid ran out, the leading medical officer, whose name was Dilip Mahalanobis, and he was a physician working with the Johns Hopkins International Center for Medical Research and Training, which had been involved in some of the earlier efforts at developing oral rehydration therapy. So he instructed his staff to prepare and distribute an oral rehydration solution prepared from individual ingredients to family members and caregivers. Those that had received the IV saline solution had a mortality rate of 30%. They distributed oral rehydration therapy to over 3,000 people with cholera, and their mortality rate was 3.6%. Now, by 1978, just within 7 years, WHO had recommended that ORT be implemented globally as a principal treatment, and it continues to be that way today and has saved millions of lives. Now, let's take a look at hunger. In 1968, biologist Paul Ehrlich wrote in his bestseller, The Population Bomb, that the battle to feed all humanity is over. In the 1970s and 80s, hundreds of millions of people will starve to death in spite of any crash program embarked upon now. He added, I have yet to meet anyone familiar with the situation who thinks India will be self-sufficient in food by 1971, and India could not possibly feed 200 million more people by 1980. Now, while Ehrlich understood the reality as it existed at the time in 1968, he was obviously not aware of the revolutionary change that was afoot and what is now widely known as the Green Revolution. And at the forefront of that revolution was a rice variant known as IR8. Just 6 years before Ehrlich's book, Dr. Peter Jennings at the International Rice Research Institute in the Philippines had crossbred 38 combinations of rice, and the 8th variant was a cross between a Chinese dwarf variety and a tall variety from Indonesia. The variant produced uniform plants with strong stems and matured in 130 days compared to the typical 160 to 170 days of traditional rice variants. In 1966, IR8 was field tested in India, and that field test resulted in a tenfold increase in yield per hectare compared to traditional varieties. So really within a span of 10 years, in 1961, less than 1% of paddies were producing modern cultivars. But by 1969, and just 4 years after that field test in India, that increased 1,000%, and mostly due to IR8. And by 1979, 40% of rice areas in 11 Asian and South Asian countries were using some variant of high-yield variety rice triggered by IR8. National Geographic has even reported that there were Indian families that named their sons IR8 because of the critical role that it played in their lives. And the Green Revolution is credited with saving 1 billion lives, and IR8 led that revolution. Now, the final case is that of M-Pesa. M-Pesa is yet to be confirmed as a global breakthrough innovation, but it's clearly on its path. M-Pesa, Pesa means money in Swahili, and it's been the most successful mobile money platform in the world. Now, prior to 2007, the only means by which Kenyans and most of the developing world population could effectively transfer money was to put cash in an envelope and send it with a friend or family member across town or across country. Alternatively, they could use an electronic wire transfer like Western Union, but that was limited in number and their networks and had a significant fee. Now, similar challenges existed simply for paying bills or even housing one's money. Brick and mortar banks were just not available in many rural areas. Now, the initial concept of M-Pesa, which is run by Safaricom, a telco in Kenya, was to create a service which could allow microfinance borrowers to conveniently receive and repay loans using the network of resellers. But when the service was piloted, customers adopted the service for a variety of alternative uses. So Safaricom refocused and launched with a different value proposition, sending remittances home across the country and making payments via your phone. They also found that setting up a network similar to airtime resellers was really not viable because the profits that they would make would be too small. However, there were thousands of mini stores or kiosks throughout the country that could offer the service along with the chips and laundry detergent and the other sundry of items that they sold. So it was this network combined with this great user interface of M-Pesa that satisfied a critical need that led to skyrocketing adoption. In 2006, less than 30% of adults in the country had access to formal financial services. Thanks to M-Pesa, today that figure stands above 85%. In 2014, the service processed over 20 billion US dollars in transactions, a figure equal to more than 40% of the national GDP. People are regularly using M-Pesa to house their money, pay bills, receive payments, and support their businesses. And it's transforming lives. According to The Economist, a study found that rural Kenyan households that adopted M-Pesa increased their income anywhere from 5 to 30%. All three of these case studies demonstrate the fundamental characteristics of breakthrough innovation. They address a primary development challenge, they created something entirely new, and that was designed for wildfire spread and global adoption. Another worthy observation was that the development of these innovations required collaboration and teamwork within and among entities. Global breakthrough innovation does not solely rest on the shoulders of one individual. And while all of these seem monumental achievements beyond our own capacity to replicate, keep in mind that most of these were simply the result of ordinary people having extraordinary ideas and the willingness to pursue them. So that does it for our first Brighten Your Bulb series. Thank you for listening, and we look forward to answering any questions and continuing the dialogue. We will do this on Chatter within the Embedded Innovation Learning Group. We ask that you type hashtag BYB and hashtag breakthrough so that we can find your questions or queries and respond. Thanks very much, and until the next Brighten Your Bulb series.